Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Hello, Fearless Freedom family. Oh, yeah. We have another amazing woman to feature on the show today. And guess what? She is our first international guest. She is coming to us from across the pond. Yes, across the pond in the UK. So today we have Leah Steele with us, and she is an amazing mentor, trainer, speaker, and writer. And she has a penchant for burnout. So, we definitely vibe in that regard. Imposter syndrome. And she is always interested in helping others thrive at work. Okay. So, Leah, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So as you said, I do all the things. I spin all the plates. I'm a writer, a speaker, a trainer. I'm sure there's like 5 other titles in there as well that I could try. But essentially, I came to this because I have my own burnout story. I was working as a lawyer. I studied, I qualified, I practiced as a lawyer for more than a decade. And because of imposter syndrome and a few other things, I really burnt out about 4 years ago now. So being a complete nerd overachiever, I started researching and, I want to know more about psychology. I want to know more about why we do what we do, how we burn out, what burnout even means. Because, 4 years, the conversation has changed so much in the last couple of years alone. 4 years ago, I used to sit in the toilets crying, being like, what is burnout? And just getting really unhelpful advice. So I decided to do something about that. And I walked the talk and the walk, all of it. And that's what I help my clients to do now as well. And that's see how we connected, because we're both fanatical about this stuff, right?
You got it. No, we are. And it's always so fascinating to me when I talk to people who are in completely different fields who have the same feeling. So how is it, I always wonder, like, how is it that feeling is so ubiquitous, number one, and then is so universal on the other.
Yeah.
Other hand. So I would love it if you could, because you kind of touched on a couple of things there. You mentioned sitting in the lavatory, crying, considering this, going through the thought experiment of what is actually burnout. So can you tell the audience a little bit more about that and what you were really going through, kind of steps that led up to that moment in the lavatory?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I studied for a long time. I decided at a very young age I was going to become a lawyer. I was 9, maybe. And that was because of my experience with lawyers, because they came into this awful situation I was living in. And it was just this kind of like beam of light, angels coming down kind of moment of peace and serenity and resolving problems. And I looked at them and was like, that's it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that over there. And it was a completely crazy thing for me. Oh, it's a crazy thing for any 9-year-old to say, I think. We should still want to be like ballerinas and astronauts at that point, right? But I decided to become a lawyer, and it was crazy for me because I came from a single parent family. Nobody in my family had ever gotten a qualification, never mind gone to university. But I decided to do it anyway. And there was a lot of, damn this, I'm going to do it anyway, I'll show you kind of attitude going on. I always knew I didn't fit in. So I worked all the way through. I did my qualifications. I started practicing. And I think a lot of us do this thing in our careers where we set out with one goal in mind. I'm going to go here down this straight path here, and it's going to be, you know, from A to B to C, and that's it. And what actually happens in our careers is we go A to D, back to B, off to Z, come back up. You know, we're swinging through the monkey bars all the time. We're reacting to opportunities, to crises, to whatever's going on. And that was very much the case in my career. I started out wanting to be a criminal or family lawyer. I ended up working in something called contentious probate, which, unless you do it, no one knows what it is. But
yeah, I'd be curious to see what that is too.
So it's where somebody has died and there is a dispute over what's happening with their estate, their monies. So contentious litigation, probate, dealing with an estate. But what it meant was I was working with people who were recently bereaved, who had relatively high levels of either family dysfunction or a family dispute that erupted over the funeral usually. And I'd be working with them for years. It was tough. You know, it was tough work for them. It was tough work for me. It was a very intense intellectual area of law. I remember sitting on the phone with a barrister, because over here we have a division between what lawyers do. So you have the solicitors that sit in the offices and the barristers that do the big drama in court kind of stuff. And I was sitting with a barrister and he told me that I'd gotten a case completely wrong. He was like, no, the other side have it right, but not for the reasons that they think they have.
Okay.
And the reason why is because of a case that is only reported in a book that's been out of print for 20 years, but I managed to get hold of a copy of it on eBay. By the way, I'm sending you the bill for £300. And I was like,
OMG.
yeah,
OMG.
exactly. Like, if you can get something wrong because of one case that nobody else has ever heard of, you can just never be sure you're 100% right. And it covers centuries of litigation in some cases. And I remember when I was at university studying this, and there's a part of contentious probate called proprietary estoppel. It is exactly as convoluted and weird as it sounds. And I remember looking at the exam question and being like, I don't even know what that means. Fast forward 7 years, I'm like an expert in it. It's ridiculous. So I was working with people who were recently bereaved in litigation for years over large sums of money. Very upsetting for them, very difficult, hard, long work. I also had my own area of expertise that nobody else in my firm, or really many people in the whole country, did. And I was giving speeches and lectures and trainings, and I had a monthly magazine column. And I remember turning up to one speaking event, and I got to the podium and I was like, I recognize the name of the person who's spoken before me. And just as I stood up to speak, it clicked, and I was like, oh, she wrote the book on this niche area of law that nobody has ever had any oversight of me doing, that I'm talking about in front of her. And yeah, it's amazing I'm still alive after that. My heart was beating.
Oh my
so
God.
fast.
Talk about imposter syndrome. You're like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
You're the person that wrote this. Like, what am I going to give you? Like, what am I going to bring to you? You know?
Exactly. It's like, how could I possibly add to this situation? And she's nodding along as I'm talking. I'm like, oh, thank God, thank God, thank God. You know, she was my litmus test right there. So I was doing a lot. I had a full-time caseload. Like I said, I had a monthly magazine column. I was traveling around doing training for people. I was training lawyers who had 30 years on me. I wrote a contribution to a book, and then I was commuting 3 hours a day. And then my mum died. And she had been in and out of hospital for 18 months. We hadn't really known what was going on.
No.
And it was all very sudden. It was all very dramatic. The police came to my door to tell me that she'd been found. And 3 weeks later, I was back at my desk working in litigation with the recently. But yeah, I know. I do exactly the same thing when I talk about the story now. I'm like, oh, did I do that? But this is what we do, particularly when we're burning out, because we're so exhausted. We have no boundaries, because that's how we get there to begin with. We're beginning to feel this distance from our work and this reduction in our efficiency and efficacy. So we're constantly trying to overwork to make up for that on top of it.
Yes, exactly.
Which erodes more of our boundaries, and hamster goes around the wheel, you know, circle of life. And it just means that we have no real kind of grip on reality, I think, by the end. because we just don't know which way is up. So less than 3 weeks after my mum died, I was back at my desk, taking one day off a week to travel to my hometown, which is a 3-hour drive away, 2.5-hour drive away, to empty my childhood home. I took on her dog, who, if you hear any barking, that's him in the background.
Yeah.
And my clients were complaining because I wasn't at my desk all my time, and I'd had this time off at Christmas, and why had I taken all this time off? And I just reached a point, commuting 3 hours a day, working with the commute, working a minimum of 12 hours a day, 5 days a
Wow.
week, usually more. The week my mum died, I'd worked 50 hours in 4 days.
Oh my gosh.
I'd had a 5 a.m. start. I'd gotten home at midnight that night, worked till midnight, well, worked till 10:30, and then commuted home a couple of evenings that week. And it just, nothing was working anymore. So that's what led me to be sitting in the toilet, sticking tissues directly into the waterline above my eyelashes so nobody could see I'd cried, asking myself, what was burnout?
Wow. Wow.
There's about 15 cautionary tales in there. What I would say is nobody needs to get to that point.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that, because
Thank you.
I know that people need to hear that. And they also need to hear, because I have a burnout story of my own. But I will say that, most people that I talk to, they are experiencing burnout from the physician side. So it's really great to hear it from the lawyer side, right? Because it's like, it just really proves that, it is something that's universal. It is something that we share, and that really is not really a great thing. It's not a good thing to share. It's like, it's something that we should be able to recognize. And so, you telling the story of what happened to you is just so integral in getting the word out that it's okay. It is okay to feel this way. It is okay to recognize that you are at a breaking point. And please, please, please do something about it. Circumvent, course correct, do something before you get to that point where you're in the lavatory, sitting on the toilet with the tissue at your waterline, trying to disguise the fact that you are bawling your eyes out. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. It's really interesting that you say that you see it from the medical side, because I have clients who are medical professionals, lawyers, teachers, civil servants, any industry. I used to say it was any white collar industry. It's not anymore. It's anywhere where you care deeply about your work. You're kind of prevented from achieving the outcome by whatever reason, and you're constantly pushing that boulder up a muddy hill. And I'm just seeing it from more and more areas.
Wow. So this is eye-opening for me too. So I really appreciate you sharing this, because I was talking to somebody the other day, because I'm thinking about developing a course, right? Because I feel like I talk about my experience all the time, but I feel like I would like to have something more intimate, where people can actually have more hands-on time, where they can figure it out for themselves and then get tools for getting out of the situation. And part of the brainstorming for the course, I was kind of talking with, so I have a coach. So I was talking to my coach, and my coach was saying, so who experiences this? And I'm like, well, I know for sure doctors do, right? Because I'm one, and I went through it. But then I kind of was thinking like, well, who else could experience this? And I did not come up with some of the folks that you mentioned, but I did think of teachers. I thought of police officers, and I thought of who else was it? I did not think of lawyers. And so, this has been eye-opening for me, because I'm like, oh. And then the other thing that is even more compounding of the intensity of this is the fact that it's not an American problem, right?
No,
because you're not.
I'm not American.
You're describing this entity, and you are miles and miles away from us, and you're seeing the same thing. So that is very eye-opening.
Well, the fact that the World Health Organization has developed this new definition for it says a lot, I think. My clients, I have a few clients in the US, but predominantly they are in the UK or Europe. But but today I've been speaking to somebody in Australia who's been talking about imposter syndrome. I know that on my mailing list, I have had people from South Africa. It's everywhere. And
Wow.
I think it's becoming more and more of an issue because we are becoming, as a society, more and more people who don't switch off, who don't disconnect. But I was reading an article like an hour before we're talking now, and it was somebody in Australia talking about, I think it's heart on my sleeve movement. And he said, lawyers are like trauma surgeons, which I thought was interesting. Like trauma surgeons, it's all very dramatic, it's all very immediate. But then he went on to say, but I think it draws a certain personality type, or I'm paraphrasing, certain personality type that doesn't necessarily refer to vulnerability.
Sure.
And actually, for me, that was completely opposite. I could list you a dozen people up straight off the top of my head who became lawyers because they had some kind of experience. There was some kind of wrong that they wanted to right. There was some kind of impact they wanted to have that had nothing to do with their ego and everything to do with people around them. So actually to say that it is a personality type that is not open to vulnerability, I think is completely mischaracterizing lawyers. And it mischaracterizes issues like burnout because we think we go so far because we're not feeling anything. Oh no. If you don't feel anything, you're not burning out. If you don't care, you're not burning out. It's because you care deeply, but there's this constant dichotomy between what you feel and what you present.
Correct.
The inner and the outer. Yeah.
So that brings me to like another, there's another light bulb going off inside my head. So, that it sounds to me like there's compartmentalization in your practice as well, because I know that for us, we definitely have it, right? Because I'm in accident and emergency, which would be the equivalent side, but for me, it's emergency department. So like, I'm there. And so I may have a case where something is not a favorable outcome to the case. And I would still have to kind of bury that emotion that I'm feeling about that case and be able to see the next patient with the same fervor and, giving self that I would if it were the beginning of my shift and I had not had that difficult case. So, we do become experts at this compartmentalization that you're describing. And what that does is, of course, we put on this persona. We have this different face that we have an alter ego almost that presents with every single case. And it is a suppression of our true selves, right? Because it's a suppression of, this is I just had a difficult case. I have feelings about that case. I haven't had an opportunity to reconcile those feelings, but yet I'm expected to be this, happy go-getter person and give to the next person and again and again and again. And you're like at 30 patients for the shift. So, it's a lot. And and so I could see how you all are experiencing the same thing because, you go from case to case and each time you have to bury that emotion that you're feeling about the previous case as you deal with this new one with fresh eyes. So, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And
totally. And my mind is blown, like totally.
The thing that I've seen a lot with my clients as well is, and I think this is where it's slightly different from your work, because you go and you do your shift and I imagine you come away and you kind of wonder about those people, but you have to bury it down again. Like you can't follow up on every person that you treat because you'd spend your entire life following up. Correct. When it comes to lawyers, when it comes to teachers, when it comes to civil servants, what we're doing is working in the long haul. I worked in contentious probate. Very few files ever closed because they would go on for years, literally years. My final job in law that I left 2 years ago, I was working in what we call the court of protection. In the US, the example I give is Britney Spears conservatorship. Ooh, it's the same thing, right? Okay. The court of protection manages hay fever, health and well-being, and finances for people who don't have mental capacity to manage their own affairs. Okay. People often think of, nice Mrs. Jones from around the corner who's got a touch of dementia and needs helping. But actually what I was doing was dealing with people who have traumatic brain injuries. Okay. Road traffic accidents, birth injuries, I had clients from age 3 to age 60 who were worth between 1 and 20 million. My dog's grumbling in the background. He doesn't
Wow.
like talking about that, clearly. And, you know, I was doing everything from buying their houses to sacking their staff to buying their nappies to
Oh my goodness.
everything. Full life management. But those cases go on for their entire lifetimes. When somebody has a traumatic brain injury, if they're not recovering from that, they may recover a level of capacity. They might recover some, even all of their capacity over time, but the vast majority do not. So those cases run year after year after year after year. There is no outcome. There is no end. There is no win. Because if you define a win as finishing or somebody physically getting something, you're going to have a problem. And
Wow.
we have the same with teachers. They run all year just to get to the end of the year and then start over again.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, same with civil servants working on projects year after year. So I find the reasons why we burn out are often because of the way that we look at our work. If you can walk away from a shift and say, I've saved a life today, or, you know, I've treated someone's rash, you know, whatever the win is, if there is a win and you can walk away and say, I did a good job, you can go back the next day refreshed. If you're waiting for that win to be delivered to you in a box with a bow and balloons and streamers and all that kind of stuff, you're going to burn out.
Ooh, that is an amazing pearl. Leah, that's going to go in the show notes for sure. No, that's great. No, that's awesome. Yeah, thinking about your mindset is so key, you know, like thinking about it as what this shift might have been bad, but like, what was the win here? You know, that's gold. Nice.
Yeah.
So, you know, this podcast talks about fear, right? That's like our underlying theme. So you touched on a few things where I would like it if you could explore more the fear surrounding it. So you touched on walking away from the career that you wanted to do since age 9, which is very remarkable, by the way, to have that kind of drive at an early age that way. So there's that. And then the other thing you touched on was having to present material to the top expert in that materials field.
Yeah.
So can you speak to how you dealt with the fear in both of those scenarios?
When it came to walking away from my career, it was more of a, I can't not. Huge fear. I had never worked for myself before. I've always been employed where, you know, so long as I didn't take my clothes off and dance on the desk, I was going to get my paycheck at the end of the month. Even then,
That's
you never know. And so, you know, there was that level of certainty. Going self-employed is tough. Going self-employed when you're talking to people about things that they do not want to admit are going on, particularly in the UK and Europe, where we are not necessarily as in touch with our feelings. I know stiff upper lip is such a cliche when it comes to the UK, but we don't pay for healthcare here. We have the National Health Service. We are not primed to hand over money for a physical or mental solution. So it's tough sometimes.
I didn't think of that as the root cause of it. Wow. Okay.
I think it is some of it. You know, there is still, I remember, God, 4 years ago. So after my mama passed away, I reached a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to find a job closer to home. I need to find a job that's going to be less stressful, because that's going to be answer to all my prayers, right? That thing that we do where we start bargaining with ourselves and the devil. Like, if I can just do this, then it'll all be okay. And I went to find a new job, and I was speaking to the recruiter, and I said, I'm actually signed off sick at the moment. I had not been eating or sleeping. I had not been grieving properly. I've been dealing with recently bereaved. I was just, you know, I was a firework that was waiting to go off, but the fuse was a bit damp, basically. And she turned to me and was like, oh, you're signed off from work? You haven't been signed off with stress or depression, have you? Because you'll never work again. And it was just so, you'll never work again if you've got a diagnosis of depression or anxiety. Which, one, absolutely not true. But two, God, my fear mind went into overdrive then.
Of course.
And thank God I was a mental capacity lawyer who could go back, don't be so stupid, of course I can.
Right.
Bloody good at my job, frankly.
Right.
But there's a lot of fear around all of this, you know, and we're not allowed to talk about our feelings. I waited until I'd left law to admit that I'd ever been medicated for anxiety or depression. And that is a kind of fear thing. So I think there is a mentality over here, at least, that plays into that. But I think we all have that to a certain level, right? We all have the shame levels, the worry, the doubt that I'm not good enough. But for me, when it came to walking away from my career, I just got to a point where I was like, I can't not. But I was very clear I was not going to just leave law and then set up my coaching, mentoring, training business. I set it up whilst I was still working as a lawyer.
Wow, that was smart.
Dealing with all of these. It was my final job where I was dealing with people who didn't have capacity to manage their own financial affairs. So I was working 60 hours a week and launching a business.
Wow.
Which is insane. However,
that is insane.
Every single day at work was a blog. Every single day at work was a have you thought about? Every single day was a this is how not to do it. Because I was seeing people crying constantly in front of me, files falling apart. Even when I was having a really bad day, it was like, right, okay, well, how would I talk to my clients? How would I talk them through this? So I spent a year actually doing that before I took my business full time. And I have done contract work since then to help me ease and float, because I want to stay out of the fear, because I never want to get to the point where I'm selling something for no other reason than I need to pay my mortgage.
Right.
So for me, it's managing a level of safety and security, whatever that looks like for you, in order to be able to do your best work. Just something I'd never considered before I burned out.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah, no, that's great. That is great. Love it. These pearls are awesome.
If I can do that, if I can launch this business doing what I do, whilst working 60 hours a week, anyone who says to me, I have a dream and I just don't think I have time, I'm like, no, you do.
Have time. You always do. You can find it. You sure
yes,
can.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so there's that. As far as delivering content to somebody who literally wrote the book, that was a little bit tough, but I'd put it together just before I went on the podium. But as I was getting there, I was proper sweaty palms, shaking, and obviously we're on a podcast, so people won't be able to see me, but I'm super pale. So when I get nervous, I go bright red, like tomato red. So I was having to regulate my breathing. I was having to do everything I could to physiologically calm the hell down.
Right.
But there'd been a point very early on when I've been working at that firm. I have got a huge fear of being seen. I've got a huge fear of being watched. Sounds slightly dodgy, but observed, of being observable, right? Going right back to when I decided to become a lawyer, my parents divorced. We moved away from my father and we were uncontactable, unfindable for very good reasons. And that's how I'd lived my whole life. People not being able to find me, my phone number not being readily available, not using my real name on the internet to begin with, which I don't think any of us did when the internet was first coming out. We all made fake names.
Typical of the enterprise.
Yeah, right. Like weird X's and underscores and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that was who I was. And I'd done one or two things. Like I'd appeared on a radio show, but it was for Russia. And so I was like, it's fine, nobody in the UK is going to pay attention to it. No one will know. And I changed my name when I was 16 and all this kind of stuff. And when I first started working for the firm, I had to have a headshot. I had to go on their website. There was going to be a bio about me, where I'd studied, and I went,
the world will now know you, see you.
Exactly. And I freaked out. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And my colleagues just went, boy, you're going to have to. It's not negotiable. You're just going to have to do it. So I grumbled and whined and bitched and moaned, got my headshot, was on the website, and had to convince myself it's fine, nothing's going to happen. And of course, over time, nothing did happen. Nothing bad did happen.
Right.
So I, from an early stage of my career, I got used to that feeling of like your toes being over the edge of the deep end of the pool. You just got to jump. You just got to throw yourself into it. And what is the worst that could happen? In my case, I thought the worst that could happen would be that family members would find me and they would tell everybody what a horrible human being I was. And obviously they believe them, not me. So, and then it didn't happen. And I realized that I could handle it. I'd handled worse things. So when I was getting up onto that podium and talking in front of somebody who knew everything about what I was talking about, she said, well, what's the worst that happens? She sits there and makes a cross face or puts her hand up and says, actually, no. Brilliant. Learning moment. Let's have a discussion. Rather than, oh my God, I'm going to be burned at the stake.
Wow, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, she'd be able to contribute from the primary source.
Exactly. Be like, well, you tell us then. You get up here and I'll sit down and have a coffee. Thank you very much. But there is nothing, and I say this and I'm very acutely aware of what you do, so this doesn't necessarily always apply to your work, but there is nothing that you can do that's going to be the end of the world, right? I was well known for being quite inappropriate in my job. I have a very black sense of humor, which when you're working with a recently bereaved is a fine line to walk.
Oh yes, I can imagine.
But one of my lawyers was really stressing out. She's like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this. And I was like, look, calm down. No one's going to die. They've already died. There's nothing worse that can happen at this point. And she kind of looked at me and was like, that's so inappropriate. And
But
yet
so
true. So yeah, it is. If they're already dead, there's nothing worse that can happen right now. And I used to say that all the time. And then I got my first client who was a medical professional. I was like, this doesn't apply to you. Don't let them die. But yeah, there is only ever so much you can do. There is only ever so much influence you can have. And if you get it wrong, it's just a case of get up, learn from it, move on, as opposed to stay on the floor and cry. I'm not prepared to stay on the floor and cry anymore.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Leah. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
thank you.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. So, so no, that was great. So those are very practical ways to get around the fear that you're experiencing. And I definitely appreciate that because, sometimes when we talk about how we overcame something, we may not necessarily provide the tools to others, who might be in a similar situation to be able to do that. So I really appreciate the fact that you laid it out in such a way that it could be applicable to somebody else's fear and somebody else's circumstance. So that's awesome. That's the coach in you, I'm sure, is is manifesting itself.
Yeah.
Great. So do you want to tell the audience so you've kind of alluded to what you do, coaching piece. Do you want to share with the audience if you have any programs coming up right now that you're offering, or any talks maybe that are coming up might be in their neighborhood that they'd want to attend, anything like that?
Well, everything that I do is online because yay, the internet, right? So I think it's like 98% of my business is all online. Which is brilliant because it means, we're doing this podcast and it's the morning for you, it's the afternoon for me. I was talking to somebody in Australia whilst they're having their dinner. I love that. So I'm constantly launching new programs and I do things that are very kind of specific. I know that in the online business world, we're all supposed to have our signature program. So it's been 3 years. I've never figured that out.
Nice.
So I do very kind of specific. I tend to do short programs. I have a low cost monthly membership program where we just every week get together on a Facebook Live and we're like, what's coming up? Or I'm talking about how to deal with appraisals or exhaustion. But my big project, which I say my big project, but it's going to be resolved very quickly. I don't like long deadlines. Maybe it's because I'm rebelling against the old law thing. But I'm currently writing my first book, which is called Burnout. I know.
Oh my gosh. We're doing the happy dance over here.
You're literally doing the happy dance. I love it. So it's called Burnout, the User's Guide. Because everything that I have read, okay, so my background is as a lawyer, but as a mental capacity lawyer, I've spent a lot of time with psychologists, psychiatrists, neurorehabilitation experts. If it's about the brain, I love it. And so I threw myself into research very early on in my burnout journey because it would be, how do I cure burnout? Stop being stressed. Hello, I'm a lawyer. There is nothing I can do about that. And so I was like, right, there's got to be a better way than going to live like in a hermitage somewhere and never speaking to anyone again.
Right.
But all of the books that I've read, everything that has helped me and has been brilliant and that I share with my clients all come from, I'm sorry, but American psychological researchers, you know, Brené Brown, Kelly McGonigal, Angela Duckworth, all of these people, brilliant work, and I love it. But they're all from an, if not an academic perspective, because they all use lived experience, but it is from the research.
Yes.
So what I want to do was write a book that is from the perspective of the person who's been there. Hi, that's me.
Hello.
Hello. It, you know, I think it makes a big difference, because when we talk about the shame that we feel and the fear that we feel around burnout, imposter syndrome, what we should be achieving, what success means, how to thrive at work, there is so much of a shame and blame conversation around that. I'm not good enough. I should have this figured out already. This is just something that should be innate, and it's not. It's rubbish. And so I wanted to write it from that perspective of, hey, I've been here. Let me show you, like around this burnout house here. And burn out, not burned out, by the way. I am not a fire starter. So I'm writing that book at the moment. I'm currently doing pre-orders and basically doing weekly trainings with people, going, hey, this is what's coming up this week and this is what I'm writing. Right. But I am writing the book in under a month.
Ooh, which hello, that's insane.
It is. It's completely insane.
Yeah.
But I am also the person who wrote my dissertation at university in like 2 days. So
what?
Yeah, I had flu as well. I annoyed everybody with that one.
Wow.
I wrote 2 final essays and a 10,000 word dissertation on victims and their evolving role in the criminal justice system. Are they in a better position today? And I nearly got a first, just slightly off.
Wow, you were also melted, girl.
So I work quickly. I am full of words.
Yes.
Not all of them are polite, but they will all be in the book. So I'm releasing it on the 1st of August, which is also my birthday. A little bit vanity right there.
That's a fabulous birthday gift.
Yeah, exactly. So that's currently my project. So I'm throwing myself into what the definition of burnout is. I'm really just going back to basics. I forget sometimes, because I've been on this journey, and you have the same, right? When you've been on this journey for a while, you're kind of operating at this not higher level, but like a more technical level or a more complex level, and forgetting that sometimes the simplest strategies are the best.
Absolutely.
So I'm bringing it right back down to the base level and saying, right, you're worried about burnout. You think you might be burning out. You think the person who sits next to you is burning out, and you want to leave a copy of this on their desk. Great. Start here.
So, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So is it going to be, it's going to be through your website, or how is it going to be distributed?
So at the moment I'm putting it through my website. Everybody gets it as kind of like a study course, but it's going to be on Amazon Kindle across every territory that has Amazon Kindle. And it's actually available to pre-order that right now.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll definitely have to get that direct link from you so that I can put it on the show notes.
Yep.
We want people to go and pre-order your book.
Hopefully.
I want to pre-order your book.
I'll send you the link.
Sweet. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. And, now we're at that point in the show where we do our fill the blank. This is our tradition on the show. And so the first one is fearless freedom means to me.
So to me, fearless freedom means, and this is where you're not going to like it, because I don't think it is necessarily fearless. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's knowing that no matter what fire you walk through, you're going to be okay on the other side.
I like that. Why wouldn't I like that?
I slightly negated the fear midway through, but I just snuck it past you.
Awesome. And then if I am fearless, I will
do whatever is right for me in this given moment. Everybody I know forgets how to care for themselves, how to put themselves first, how to put themselves somewhere on the bloody list. So, if I'm fearless, I will put myself on that list and I will do whatever I need to do for me in that moment.
Yes. And then last but not least, my battle cry is?
My battle cry is, you don't have to kill yourself at work in order to be a good human being.
Love it. So good. Oh my gosh, guys, this was an amazing episode and our first international episode. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Doing the dance.
She is doing a dance too, guys, for real. Okay. Thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on this journey. Fear is all around us. It strives to stop us from achieving our greatness. We have the tools to be overcomers. By sharing our stories, supporting each other, and doing self-reflection, we can do this. If you found value in this conversation today, please be sure to subscribe to and share this podcast with your friends. By going to your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review and a 5-star rating, you will help to get the word out about it. And that is much appreciated. Thanks again for spending time with us. I appreciate your time and your attention. It is my hope that you will punch fear in the face today and that you will be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.